If you're watching the replay, welcome to the CarrGuy and SixFan show. This is just a simple 15-second pause as we wait to go live and those on the other end to see us. So with that, we like to say, welcome to the CarrGuy and SixFan show. I'm your host, Grant Tommy. And of course, as you know, I am straight SixFan, which would be SixFan of this equation. And that means I'm only half of the gig. So up somewhere over here, I always point the wrong way, is the other half of that equation.
That's me. My name is Jason. I am the car guy of the CarrGuy and SixFan show. And as we like to open up every show, I want to remind you guys that you are now watching the gold standard of YouTube automotive talk show. We are virus-free. We have no gluten and absolutely no Carol Baskin. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to CarrGuy and SixFan show. And before we get into everything, I want to let everybody know that our guest tonight, if you haven't seen already, is Jefft Ford from AutoRestoMod. Jefft, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
And we're just going to go right quick into the chat and welcome everybody who has decided to show up tonight. Grant, why don't you go ahead and let everybody know who is in there?
Well, while you say we're gluten-free, I want you to speak for yourself because I'm pretty sure in my hand is a bunch.
I had gluten. Yeah, gluten too.
Oh.
Well, as Jason said, we did want to acknowledge, of course, coming in kind of right out of the gate was Bub's Garage TV, Craig Durbin. We have Impact's Garage and Gaming, JB Freeman. Who else do we have? I know we picked up America Bumper to Bumper, Eford Garage, and Auto Alley, who came to us via AutoRestoMod. So welcome. It's a new face. We like having new people here. So Chris Dirty Trucker 08, Harrison's Rod and Custom. I think I got the brunt of everybody, but this is also Darren's Gray Ghost. But this is also where we remind you guys 17 is great, but if you all take a moment and just kind of do the old right click thing and share the link and put it on your social media, and more people come in, it becomes even more entertaining. So with that, we want to kind of send it down to our guest, Jefft Ford, AutoRestoMod. And I think where we'll start is we call you AutoRestoMod, but the full-blown name on your channel name, kind of a mouthful, but AutoRestoMod Manic Mechanic Gasoline Media. Why don't you break that down for us and tell us what you're all about?
Well, AutoRestoMod is our very first show. We started over 10 years ago with the idea of it must be pretty simple to put a YouTube show together. So we'll just buy a cheap camera and start making a show. And 10 years later, we're still doing it. We have sponsors with National Parts Depot, Eden Detroit Spring, Wildfire Lifts, and we produce how-to for guys with classic cars, usually anything 1963 at this point on up to the middle 70s. Manic Mechanic was started because we were talking to the guys at Autocrafters. They wanted to have their own spot to do some stuff with the classic Ford lines. So it had been other things, and then we moved it to Manic Mechanic, and now I'm just a little afraid to take the name and put Ford on it somewhere. Not that I'm afraid of calling it Ford, but afraid of what it might do to people trying to find the show. Then I realized, oh my gosh, we're in trouble because we're AutoRestoMod, but we have Manic Mechanic. So then I started Gasoline Media, which eventually by the end of this year will take over on the channel name as our primary name. The Gasoline Media is our overarching name for the two shows and the other ones that we have, like Ford's Focus. So I don't have that one mentioned, but that's basically just me blathering on about things that I find interesting or funny.
Well, Jefft, one of the things that we talked about before we went live was you had mentioned that we have two car names in the show tonight, and we're just a little bit afraid that we may potentially break the internet. Having said that, but I want to see if I relate to you and you relate to me with having a car. Obviously, my last name is Carr. That's how I got that. But having that as part of your name, and you with Ford, growing up, you kind of automatically were kind of thrown into the car game. My dad was a car guy. My grandfather was a car guy. And, you know, when growing up in school everyone said, well, just because your last name's Carr doesn't mean you have to like cars and all this stuff. It's like, well, yeah, guess
It
what?
does.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
So, you know, I guess you had mentioned earlier you are a few years older than I am. So growing up, did you kind of go through that with the last name Ford?
What's really funny is nobody really knows this, but my dad was a huge Dodge fan.
Bonus.
Yeah, for you that's great, but for me it's a little awkward. He loved Dodges. He finally got into the Ford thing later on in life, but Pops was he owned Dodges right up until he bought a '56 Ford, like in 1961 or '62, and drove it for a number of years. And then he got to be a Ford guy from that. But initially, Dad was a Dodge person. And oddly enough, my father wasn't really into cars that much. Dad was actually a computer guy. That was his thing that he loved to do. So for me, you know, I just started really getting into it. And because my last name is Ford, I, you know, obviously gravitated toward the Ford brand of cars. So just the way it went. And then, you know, I've been through various things with all that. So editor for car magazines and things like that. But that didn't come until, you know, in my late 30s. So.
Well, so talk a little bit about that experience as editor for car magazines. I mean, it looks like behind you, you maybe got a car rendering over your shoulder.
Yeah, I've got, that's actually just a nice piece of art that I found at a Hobby Lobby here. And the funny thing is, the two other things right behind my head are actually bill of sales for cars that my grandfather had. My mom's dad was actually the car nut. He's probably where I got my bent for cars from. His last name was Oots, has nothing to do. Like the potato chip company, that's my mother's maiden name. So he's really where I kind of got my car fetishes from, because he was constantly trading cars when I was little. He would have a Galaxy for like 2 years, trade it off on another Galaxy. So, and he did that. Well, these two titles, or these two bill of sales, are 2 years apart. He bought one, then he bought the other one. We traded in on the other one 2 years later. So,
well, I was going to say, speaking of Galaxies, I mean, I know that's part of your channel, but one of the things that probably the build I'm probably most jealous of would be your Fairlane wagon. And so even though I'm a Ford guy myself, I find it a little bit hard to keep track of what's a Galaxy wagon versus a Fairlane wagon versus a Country Squire. They all kind of muddle together. I mean, my dream, I want to build one of those stacked headlight, like 66, 67 wagons. But I can't ever pull the right name out of the hat when I try to describe to somebody what I want to build. Can you walk us through helping to delineate which is which?
Well, it's a little hard sometimes, because Ford like to take their models of cars and make them similar in look and style. If you look at a 64 Falcon, it has kind of a similar flair to a 64 Galaxy. So in 66, Ford had stacked headlights on both the Galaxy and on the Fairlane. The Fairlane is just a mid-size car. It's not their full-size car. I mean, we don't even know what a full-size car is anymore. But the Galaxy was a full-size car at that time. And the Country Squire was the top of the top. It had the wood side paneling on it. It was the family truckster of its day. So now they had a Squire wagon as well for the Fairlane model. So you could find it on both ends. Both of them came packed with either, 390 was about the biggest thing you'd find in a Fairlane wagon. There is a 66, I believe, Galaxy 428 4-barrel 4-speed wagon that a guy has here in the States. It's a one of one. They built one for him, and they had to go all the way up the food chain at Ford to get it built. So it's bucket seat with a 4-speed in a wagon.
Did that make it on Haggerty's channel at one time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. And I used to know the guy that owned the car before the current owner that has it. Adrian Clements had the car for a long time. And I always was bothering him to go, you know, I was going to restore it because it's kind of this way. Now, of course, the patina thing, you can leave it ratty looking and nobody cares. So.
So, Jeff, one of the things that we generally like to talk about on the show is I'm going to kind of segue into something here, so just bear with me for a second.
Sure.
Is we usually like to ask our guests what their first vehicle was. And the reason why I say I'm going to segue into something is because it brings us up to a challenge that we currently have out there. I'm going to kind of plug it right now. Is we're calling it the Bumper to Bumper Challenge. And we're challenging other YouTube channels to list every car they've ever owned. The challenge is it's a maximum 5-minute video. So we're going to put the rules to the Bumper to Bumper Challenge in the comment section or in the description below. And the reason why we're doing this is because we've got a buddy of ours who is Kip from America Bumper to Bumper. He's in the chat. He's a small channel. We're trying to boost his channel up to 1,000 subscribers or more with this challenge. So we're hoping that people will follow the rules, tag Kip, show us what you've got, and make a video out of it. And so having said all that, I've done the plug for the Bumper to Bumper Challenge. What, Jeff, was your first vehicle that you ever owned?
The first vehicle I ever owned, I'm glad you put it that way, because when I was in high school, I drove my mom and dad's E150 van with curtains in the windows. So you can imagine how popular I was with dads. Why don't you guys just stay here tonight? We'll rent a movie and play it on the VCR.
And sniff fumes out of the doghouse.
You know, I mean, so my very first vehicle, oddly enough, was a 73 Gran Torino Sport fastback with a 351 Cleveland and a C6 automatic. So it was actually a pretty neat car. I mean, my first car was something that I had given the opportunity to buy 2 different cars. And to this day, I kind of wonder if I made the wrong choice. There was a 72 Encode 4-door that was a former Highway Patrol pursuit car. So Encode is a 429 4-barrel with 4-wheel disc brakes. At least that's what the guy who was selling it to me told me it was. But it had all the police package stuff on it, except didn't have lights, but it had the bigger sway bars and the bigger brakes and all the stuff that they put on the police package cars. And it was a 429, but it was a 4-door. So I was like, yeah. And he had the 73 Gran Torino Sport. So I was like, well, you know, flashy mag wheels on it. Heck yeah, I'm going to do that. So that's what I ended up buying as my first car. And I actually paid mom and dad for the car too, because I got that when I was a junior in high school. So I actually went to work at a food store as a bag boy and paid him off on that one. And probably got it totaled by a semi truck in my senior year in high school. Oof. Not something I did. I was actually turning onto my road, and he was on the side of the road barreling along at about 50 miles an hour because he was late for an appointment. So it got totaled. It's now long gone. I've since had 3 of them. If that'll tell you anything, how much I like those cars.
The proportion on the 73, it's unique because, well, so another thing you'll come to find out about Jason and I is we have this like weird obsession with the OPEC era cars. So I sort of, you know, starts in 73, kind of the end you can kind of debate, you know, sometimes I say 79, sometimes I say 81, because I think right around that time proportions started to get better. But the 73's always had a nice, it's just got a nice balance. That rear quarter compared to the nose, and the 5-mile-an-hour bumper wasn't incredibly ridiculous yet on the 73. That's a really sharp car, I think, for a pro touring build. And actually, I'm going to hand it over to Jason because once you said 73, Torino, I've got something I want to go grab. So you got to excuse me for a second.
Yeah, so again, part of the reason why we started the show was simply to help other small channels grow. Grant and I did it for ourselves to get to 1,000 subscribers. That was just kind of our goal. It was a whim. Let's put a live feed together, see how many people we can get, and it worked for us, and it still works today in our 3rd season. Now, next week is our final episode of season 3. But is there something that you would claim to fame on AutoRestoMod or Manic Mechanic or whatever you have that you kind of made your channel what it is today?
I I don't know. I mean, we just really are known for hardcore how-to. We generally we'll do some fun stuff every once in a while. We'll do, exploring the cars and going out and looking at them, or going out for a drive like we did recently in the F-100 Ford pickup truck. But on the whole, we strive to do how-to. I wouldn't say we're not an entertainment channel, because I think we can have fun, and we show people it's fun to work on cars. But we are definitely, really into the hardcore how-to. We generally want to show guys how to work on their cars, because there's a lot of younger guys that are now getting into the hobby that don't have a clue. And so I'm hoping, come on, dude, give yourself a little bit of a break. I'm hoping to be able to provide that for folks. I'm hoping to be able to give folks the ability to do it on their own. That's what we try to do. And I think that's what I would say we were probably most known for, is just that, being able to provide hardcore how-to. There's a ton of not TV, but a lot of entertaining car shows. There's people out there doing entertaining stuff all the time, and it's stream of consciousness videos seem to do really well on YouTube. Flying Sparks Garage is one that's, she does a great job with the stream of consciousness. What is it? The Craig 909. He's kind of jumped up in the last year or so, and people want to watch that. I guess folks want to sit down and eat Cheetos and rub them on their T-shirt and watch a guy work on a car. But I want to show you how to do it, because I come from that old school background of showing you how to do stuff. So that's kind of our thing. We could go more stream of consciousness, but I keep fighting it.
Well, and just for the record, I mentioned to you in our phone conversation the other day, is that I find you entertaining, not because I want to laugh at you for what you're doing, just because you do have a sense of humor. You do kind of characterize yourself as kind of happy-go-lucky, and oh well, if something happens. But it is entertaining. It's not just it is not just how to. I certainly appreciate the humor that you add to your show.
Well, there are times when we get people that point and laugh at us, and you get trolls. You get trolls all the time, no matter what you do. So they're out there. This you have to live with it. I've said something about this before. Any guys that are on here that are looking at doing their own channel or doing their own channel, you got to get a thick skin. You can't let them get to you. And my really good friend Bill Rodishin, who runs 6 Round Studios on YouTube, he's just starting out as well. And Bill told me, he says, you realize that when you have a troll that types something into your page, YouTube doesn't give a crap about whether they say something negative, as long as they say something. So I'm like, when I look at, if I can switch my brain and look at it that way, somebody says something negative, cool. YouTube sees that as a comment. That's good.
Well, that means he's watching too.
Yeah, exactly. He got mad enough to write something. That's awesome.
Well, and that's part of what this show is about, though, is to start talking about struggles and things we all deal with, and how to manage it and how to handle it. I mean, much of what you said, Jeff, I learned how to handle. The thumbs down doesn't bother me one bit, because someone once explained it to me. It's like, that's just YouTube's way of understanding what to recommend for somebody. Yep. So when somebody gives you a thumbs down, it just doesn't necessarily mean they didn't like your stuff. Some people might just be saying like, yeah, you know what, this didn't quite do it for me when I thought I was going to see something. And so that's one. I'm lucky enough. I'm small enough. I don't have to deal with the haters quite as a bit. Although I may have uncovered those when I started bench or home porting a set of GT40P heads. I'm figuring out 500 different ways of how I'm supposed to have done it otherwise. So, dude, but
I tell you, can I give you a hit on that though? Porting heads is kind of like having 2 different plumbers come into your house. Both of them are going to tell you the other guy sucked. You can hire 3 or 4 different plumbers. Every one of them plumbers is going to come into your house and go, I don't know what that other guy was doing, but he was stupid. That guy leaves, you bring another guy in. He comes in, he goes, last 2 guys you had in here, they were dumb as a box of rocks. You should have done it this way.
But they all showed their butt crack. That's
hey, One thing in common.
That's true. They all show their butt crack.
It's almost like they get out of their van and they pull their pants down before they walk in the door. Right?
That's one of the first classes in plumbing school.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, you got to have your pants right here. If they're not right here,
too high.
It's too high.
Come back when you can follow the
half moon on
the dress code. Well, what I was getting at was some of the things you said there previously was kind of two things. Jason and I always talk about ad nausea almost the balance of, because neither of us try to be a how-to channel. We do at times when there's something valuable, but oftentimes someone's already beat us to it anyway. And then for me, when you talked about younger people who don't have a clue, I mean, I don't, because my dad wasn't into cars, so everything I learned is sort of stuff. My dad was a carpenter, so that's why you see like most of the skills I picked up from my dad are like that, behind me. But anyway, so but I grew up in like that era of the TNN, the car shows showing up on TNN, and fell in love with Carl Winslow building Eddie's old cop car and Tim Allen on Home Improvement. Like I've always wanted to do this. So my channel's about like wanting to just inspire people like, hey, you can be in your mid-30s like me without any actual skills. Come follow along with me and just don't be afraid. Like, because fear is one of the things I run into the most, because I don't have anybody to come show me how to like adjust valves. I have to figure that out. I mean, I will probably find someone when it comes time to do that, but just
it's
things
not
like that.
Hard. It's really not that hard. I mean, that's the thing. One of the things a friend of mine told me years ago, and I've taken it to heart as far as working on classic cars, because you're going to screw up. He said the difference between a hack and a craftsman is a craftsman knows how to hide his mistakes. And I really took that to heart. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. What I mean is that a lot of guys don't work on their cars. They get into a spot where they freeze up. And they don't work on their car because they think they're going to screw something up. My thought process on it is, you are going to screw something up. But as long as you learn from that screw up and you take that information and don't lose it, but move it forward with you, then you become more and more knowledgeable in what you can do to a classic car, or even a newer car. I prefer the classics because there's a lot less. Well, the computer says that the O2 sensor on the left-hand bank is bad. Then you pull the O2 sensor out, and what it didn't tell you was that it went bad because this valve over here was burnt. And so, the computer has to tell you what to do. Whereas with a classic, I run into much less of that. I have an easier time going through and saying, okay, well, it's got to be this, 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 or this. So I guess one of the things going back to what you were asking before, I like empowering people with the knowledge to be able to do it, whatever it is. This Galaxy that we just picked up, I mean, honestly, that car is a bit of a nightmare in some respects, but that's how a lot of enthusiasts would view the car. I view it as a target-rich environment.
Content for days.
So, yes,
right, yeah.
So many things to do.
Well, I think what I was getting at with all of that was that, so as you've found your niche, since you started 10 years ago, you just stuck with the how-to and so you've seen a lot in 10 years. YouTube was definitely, it's probably going to turn over itself probably every year and a half or something. It's a little different environment than what it was a year and a half ago. So what are some of the lessons you've learned over the course of that time as you've grown and tried to keep, outdoing yourself on YouTube, knowing that you are kind of in this how-to kind of niche?
Well, I mean, it's an evolving market. One of the things I will say is my friend at 6 Rounds, Bill Rodishin, was instrumental into getting me to look at my analytics to see what is and isn't working when I'm doing my channel. Some of these people, like the Craig 909, Flying Sparks, they realized that they're not how-to people, they are entertainers. And so they really try to focus their channel on entertaining folks. Peter McKinnon's another one he's a video guy. And what I will tell you guys, if you're doing your own channel, go and look at guys like Peter McKinnon. David Schiffer's another guy from up in Toronto. I think it's Schiffer is his last name. These guys are videographers that have huge numbers on YouTube because they're creating entertainment along. There's very little informative stuff going on their channels in some cases, but I go to them to see how to improve my show. And so to your point about improving myself, I look at other areas for improvement. I will go out and look at other channels that are like, Peter McKinnon and them going, okay, what is he doing that's working? And so that's been the evolution for me. And that's one of the things that Bill Rodishin brought up is he says, go look at these channels. These guys are working really well. Maybe you can incorporate some of this into your show. Because I'll admit, I went through a real flat period for about 2 years where I was just making videos because I wanted to make videos, but also I needed a paycheck. Because I have sponsors. I mean, I have people that rely on me to produce videos in order to satisfy my financial responsibilities to them. But in the last year or so, with Bill on board, he's actually started pushing me in areas because he's a very small channel. He's under 1,000 viewers right now. So we call me the battleship and him the PT boat because we can look at what his channel is doing and say, okay, this really worked or this really didn't. Let's see how that applies on a larger channel like yours. I mean, some of these guys have outrun me readily. Like, you know, I'm at 61,000 total subscribers, and some of these guys are at 61,000. They've only been doing it 2 years. And I think a lot of it boils down to the niche in which you operate. Bill says that my channel is more of a library. Guys like y'all would say, okay, man, it seems like AutoRestoMod did a video on how to put a 4R70W in a Fairlane station wagon. And this is 2 years from now. So this guy goes back and starts watching those videos to see how to do it. Seems like AutoRestoMod did something on how to recover Mustang seats. So they'll go and watch that video. And I think I've learned that that's where my strength is, and I can't compare myself to other people like the entertainment channels because I'm not an entertainment channel. And I'm not saying that's not a good model. It is. I'm just not good at it. I mean, I'm entertaining, but I'm not certainly pretty. I should probably do like you guys, hide it with a beard.
We can open that up.
I'm getting this thing done
if you want.
I'm getting this.
I'm pretty underneath.
I know. I have to imagine you grew the beard to hide the beauty because you just didn't want people bugging you all the time.
Yeah,
I get it. And him too.
It was a double chin.
I'm getting a little turkey neck thing. It's 57. It's there. It's coming on. Can't help it. So I should get a big puffy beard and do that. Get some tats. Because apparently if you're going to do this kind of thing for Hollywood, you got to have tats, a beard, or just be incredibly weird. Or incredibly good looking, I guess. That's the other thing. So,
hey,
I got none of those things.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, I guess.
I don't even have that. That's probably why nobody ever called.
So Jeff, it's at this point in the show, we've got probably 7 or 8 minutes left that we want to try and open up the chat for some questions for you. So guys, if you're in the chat, go ahead and type some questions and we'll try and keep an eye on the chat. If you have any questions for Jeff that you want to ask in there, go ahead and do that. But we also, sorry, go ahead, Grant.
Well, I do know one. Of course, you know, Eric, the King, the Great, the First is never short on questions, especially when it comes to his Mercury Cougars. So he was asking Jeff if you've ever put your hands on a Mercury Cougar over the years.
Oh, I've messed with many Cougars. We're talking about cars. Sorry.
Wow.
Told you. I can throttle it on the show.
I
yes,
totally
actually, I have owned let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 Cougars. Five of them were 67.8 cars. Of those 5, 4 of them were parts cars. The other one was the one that if I had any brains at all, I would have kept. It was a 69 XR7 428 Cobra Jet. Still had the original carpet, the original seats. It was in beautiful condition. And my now ex-wife hated that car with horrible hate. Like every time she turned around, it was, when are you going to get rid of it? When are you going to get rid of it? That was a 1 of 7 car. They only built 7 like that one.
Wow.
She's gone. So is the car.
The car had to go. Well, then.
Bye.
Jason, I apologize. I kind of cut you off on. I think you were going somewhere or something before I.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say we carry on with our somewhat unwritten agenda, so to speak. That we like to take an opportunity to give our viewers an insight to what's coming up on our channel. So I'm going to leave you just for a second, Jeff, to think about that. Maybe there's something you want to share, but Grant, go ahead and let us know what's coming up on Straight SixFan.
Well, I would anticipate Sunday begins the deconstruction on the top end of Project Low Fairmont. So while I don't have both heads ported yet, that doesn't really matter. You guys won't know unless you watch this show. I'll do that some other time, get the other one caught up, but it's time to just start taking things apart in the engine bay.
Yeah, and on my channel, I have been fortunate, like I had mentioned in previous videos, that I had been about 2 weeks ahead on my video production, and well, those videos ended on Tuesday. So I've been trying for the last 2 or 3 days to put a couple of videos together, and I did put one together just tonight before the show, and I'm not sure if you can see over my left shoulder here some green tape on the box side on Old Dale. But that will be the next video coming out for early Saturday morning. We got some moldings finally put on, and I'll show you how I did that. So, Jeff, is there something that you've got coming up in the next couple of days here on AutoRestoMod that you want to share?
Well, we just released a video on how to tune your handling on an F100. That one went up today, actually this morning about 4 a.m. Next Monday, we're going to start on Dashpad for the Galaxy on Manic Mechanic. And then we're going to be doing a disc brake install, the actual install of the I-beams and everything on the 72 Ford pickup truck next Thursday. I mean, we bang out 2 videos a week, with the exception of 1 week I take a break to breathe a little bit. So we're generally putting up 2 videos a week on the 2 different channels. And every once in a while, we'll throw a Ford's Focus in there just for fun.
So we did have some comments in the chat. Robert McDonald had mentioned that AutoRestoMod is entertaining while being extremely informative, and I would have to agree with that statement 100%.
Robert, your 20's in the mail.
And somebody else had asked, is it too late to get the car back? I assume they were talking about the Cougar, not the wife.
I don't want her back. I got a new one. I like this one a lot. She likes cars really well. So. No, I have actually looked for that car. I tried doing a VIN search, and it's not popping anywhere. I know the car still exists because, as rare as it is, the guy who bought it hopefully didn't wreck it and did something with it. It's somewhere. Last time I knew of it, it was in Houston, Texas, but that was back in 94 or 95. So it's possibly long gone. And yes, I would get back into another Cougar if that's your next question. I like Cougars a lot. I've enjoyed working on those cars. I love the hideaway headlights on them. I'm a geek for little things like hideaway headlights and sequential turn signals and all that mess. So yeah, we would probably do a Cougar again if I found a decent one. But golly, the prices on all that stuff is just going through the roof. So. And decent ones are getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why, at least for myself, is I focus on like entry level hot rodding. Why I think that era of the 73 to 81 is more appealing to me, because well, there's just a little more stock, and it's crazy to think. I mean, I'm 34, but I remember, hearing my dad talk about the muscle car era, and I mean, a 70 Chevelle is now 50 years old. whereas when my dad was telling me about it in 1997, it was 27 years old. So that's just the reality of it. As you said, the parts are getting harder and harder to find. But we'll wind the episode down. And for those of you who are new to the Car Guy and SixFan show, we did want to remind you this is a joint venture between me and old Car Guy. Oh yeah, I always forget it's reverse. Over that way.
I can just do this.
There you go. The final episode of season 3 will be on his channel next week, Thursday night, same bat channel, or same bat time, not the same bat channel. But I kind of wanted to set the table for next week's guest because it coincides with the conversation we were having off air. But before I do that, just because I got off screen, this was what I wanted to go grab. Was I had done a rendering for a 73 Ranchero.
Yeah, it's a good job, man. You do nice work.
And but the conversation we wanted to have, this was rendering somebody didn't pay me for, was your latest upload of I-beam suspension versus Crown Vic swap. And our next guest next week has done a F100 body swap on a Crown Vic frame. So I know people are kind of misunderstanding what you said in that latest upload, Jeff. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of clear the air. And after that, Jason, you can send us on home.
Well, basically, my thing is I like the Crown Vic swap. I think it's a great idea. It's just depending on what you want to do with your vehicle. That's really all it boils down to for me. Is if like my truck, I wouldn't do it on that truck because it's kind of a rusty bag. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time and effort putting a Crown Vic front end on a pig. It's like, you can put lipstick on the you can put lipstick on the pig. But by gum, it's still a pig whenever you're done with it. So if I found a nicer body truck, I probably would honestly do a Crown Vic swap. So because I've had all the I-beam guys are out there with the torches and the pitchforks wanting to go and slay all the Crown Vic guys. And then we had one guy pop up wanting to put an LS motor in. I was like, okay, now I'm out. I'm not going to put a Chevy motor in.
That'd be just sacrilegious, wouldn't it?
That's wrong. That's wrong.
My goodness.
I couldn't do it.
I've done that. Anyway, let's take this opportunity. Now, we could certainly sit here and we could talk about a lot of things for a lot longer. Jeff, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your Thursday evening to join us.
It was fun. I loved it.
Being very accommodating. One of the things that I really wanted to touch on that we didn't get a chance to, maybe for a next time, is talking about your production assistance. I know that you did a little bit of a show on that one time, talking about how you utilize your help, and I think that's an amazing thing that you're doing. But we're going to save that for maybe another time. So thanks again for being a part of the Car Guy and SixFan show. It really makes what we're doing. It validates what we're doing, that we're getting some great content, we're getting some good people on the show, and being able to spread out what it takes to be a successful channel. So hopefully we can get you back maybe in season 4. And we've got somebody offering up a super chat. Mopar Dan offered up a super chat there for $9.99. Thank you so much. That's going to Grant this week. So don't forget, season finale, Car Guy and SixFan show is going to be on my channel next week. At the same time, don't miss out on that. Thanks everyone for being in the chat. Thanks for spending your Thursday evening with us. And as we end the show almost every week anyways, stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. I love you guys. We'll see you next week.